You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. Believe it or not, I'm actually going to start with the Giants. They made the first hire in this carousel. They hired Joe Schoen to be their next GM. Previously, Schoen was assistant GM of the Bills. He was there from 2017 to 2021. We know how great Brandon Beane has done as Bills GM. One of the first things that Beane did when he got the Buffalo job was hire Schoen away from the Dolphins. The two of them worked together with the Panthers. Schoen was with the Dolphins before he made the leap to the Bills. When Beane made the leap from the Panthers to the Bills, Beane said to Schoen, "Come up north and be my assistant GM." This is a really good hire for the Giants. Look, I'm a Jets fan. I hate the Giants. Nothing would make me happier than to sit here and list off all the reasons why this isn't going to work. But no, this is a very good hire. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone that won't like it. There is something to be said about coming from a successful organization in the Bills. There is something to be said about being endorsed by Brandon Beane, one of the best GMs in the NFL. And the best thing is, Schoen has no Giants connections whatsoever. He never worked for the Giants, didn't have any ins with anybody at the organization. I don't know if he's ever been to a Giants game. I mean, I'm sure he has as a scout, but this guy has no obvious connections to the Giants, and that should make you really happy. Dave Gettleman was with the Giants previously, before he went to the Panthers and then went back to the Giants. Jerry Reese spent his entire NFL career with the Giants. Ernie Accorsi, before he became GM of the Giants, was Giants assistant GM. I understand that he was with the Colts and Browns before that as GM, but still, there is something to be said about him being assistant GM of the Giants before being named their GM. Even a guy like Andy Robustelli was a great Giant, became their GM, and was absolutely dreadful. Even when they hired an interim GM, they went with Kevin Abrams, someone who had been with the Giants for an incredibly long time. The last time the Giants went outside the organization to hire a GM was George Young. George Young is probably the greatest GM in Giants history. I mean, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, the Giants have been absolute garbage for years now. Why would they hire from within? A month ago, the prevailing sentiment was that Kevin Abrams would be the GM and Joe Judge would stay as head coach. Alright, stupid organizations make stupid decisions. But this is not a stupid decision. This is a very good move. The one thing I'll say is Shane hasn't been a sexy candidate for a long time. You think about the guys who made the rounds for a really long time. It was guys like Nick Caserio, George Payton, Terry Fontenot, Scott Fitterer, and guys like that. All those guys got hired, so then the next group of guys come up. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're great candidates. That just means they were next in line to go on the interview circuit. And look, we've seen people come from successful organizations that really had nothing to do with the success of that organization. Cough, cough, John Idzik. I mean, this doesn't guarantee success by any stretch. He was not my first choice for the Giants' job. I would have loved Louis Riddick. I thought Rick Spielman would have made sense also, but that does not make this a bad hire. Alright, I like this move a lot. I do think it's gonna work. Also, Joe Shane's name, and yes, it is Shane, I looked. It's not Shone, it's Shane. Reminds me of a very good Western. Shane, with Alan Ladd. And who can forget the last scene of that movie? Shane! Come back, Shane! Great Western. You can watch that after you watch Rocky Horror. Rest in peace, Meatloaf. Now look, Shane has a very, very big challenge ahead of him. It's gonna be tough sailing for the Giants in the immediate future. I mean, I've said this before. The Giants are in cap hell right now. They're just under $7 million over the cap, according to overthecap.com. So they've got to make really tough decisions. Their roster's going to get worse. It's going to be a bloodbath in East Rutherford. And the blood won't be green. It'll be blue with a tinge of red. But look, that's what Shane signed up for. I mean, when he made the move to Buffalo, the Bills were not a good organization. They had the longest active playoff drought in the NFL when Brandon Beane took over. What happened the year that Beane became GM? The Bills made the playoffs. What happened after that? The Bills drafted Josh Allen. What happened 2 years after that? Josh Allen became an MVP candidate, and the Bills made the AFC title game. So Shane knows how to fix bad organizations. Now I'll say this. I got into a Twitter discussion with a couple of my friends, Dominic Arbolino and Eric Fischetti. And I think it would be interesting to examine some of the things that they said. For whatever it's worth, Dominic is a Jets fan and Eric is a Giants fan. Dominic tweeted at Eric, let's see if they get Dable or Flores as the head coach next. I said, given the fact that Shane is coming from the Bills, you've got to think that Dable is the odds-on favorite now. We had heard before that Deshaun Watson and Brian Flores could join forces with the Giants. That seemed to be where everything was heading, but seeing as though the Giants hired someone with a Bills connection, and Brian Dable is one of the sexiest head coaching candidates around, that seems like the obvious pairing. I also said, will it be interesting to see if they get Watson now? Dominic replied to that with, according to @U Stadium, Flores already has an interview lined up with the Giants. Shane and Flores love each other. So, okay, if that is true, that Joe Shane and Brian Flores have a great relationship, they were both previously with the Dolphins, although not at the same time, but maybe someone who spanned the Gase and Flores eras gave Shane a good recommendation of Flores or vice versa, and the two of them are close, Flores would still be in the running. And it would not be a bad hire by any stretch. Brian Dable or Brian Flores would make a ton of sense for the Giants. Alright, Eric said that also. I agree with him 100%. I don't think those are the only guys who would make sense. Matt Eberflus would make sense. I could see Brian Callahan working. Byron Leftwich would make sense. But I agree with Eric that Dable and Flores are the top two. But I will say this. Eric's response to my tweet about Dable and what happened afterwards is actually very interesting. Eric said, and remember, he's a Giants fan, QB is the least of my worries right now. Fix the line and get a pass rush. Dominic then said, building in the trenches is the first thing you need to do to start a rebuild. Agree with you there. If Dable is hired by the Giants, though, I could potentially see them keeping Jones for one season. Basically because him and Josh Allen have a similar skill set. Eric then replied to that. I don't think keeping Jones for at least this year would be a bad move. The GM has full control over everything. And according to the GM candidates, they thought that Jones was dealt a very bad hand, and they wouldn't be opposed to giving him one more shot. Dominic then said that the quarterback class in this draft is top tier. Eric then said, look out for Malik Willis. He's a name to watch in the draft. Okay. Lot to unpack there. The notion that quarterback is the least of his worries is stunning to me. Okay, I don't know if Eric wants the Giants to give Jones one more year. Like, what I'd love to ask him is this. If he was Joe Schoen, if he was taking over the Giants, would he give Jones another year? Or would he just say, adios, amigo, go the way of Alan Ladd in the movie Shane? Thing is, though, no one will be calling for him to come back. Like I said, it's a great Western. I mean, Eric did say he doesn't think keeping Jones for at least this year would be a bad move. But then he also said that the GM candidates didn't think that Jones was given a fair shot. So, I don't know if he was mentioning that in the vein of how Joe Schoen is going to perceive things, or what he would do if he took over the Giants. I'll say this. The notion that building in the trenches is the first thing you need to do to start a rebuild is just wrong. Okay, I don't know where Dominic got that from, but no. No. You start with a quarterback and everything else comes secondary. Quarterback is the most important position in sports. Okay, I understand if you have a bad offensive line, the quarterback's job becomes very difficult. But realize something, if you put the worst quarterback in the world behind a great offensive line, that quarterback is gonna struggle. Baker Mayfield did not have a good year last year. Have you heard anyone say that the Browns' offensive line is bad? No one's gonna mistake Taylor Heineke for Mark Rippon anytime soon. Have you heard anyone say that Washington's O-line is really, really bad? You need at least a good quarterback to contend in the NFL. Daniel Jones has done nothing to show you that he is a good quarterback. Daniel Jones has put together 3 losing seasons, has not gotten better as his career has progressed. You want to tell me he's cut down on the fumbles? Great, fantastic, but the total passing yards has gone down each year. The passing touchdowns have gone down each year. If anyone thinks that Daniel Jones can be the quarterback of a Super Bowl winning team, or even a playoff team, you're out of your mind. Okay, the Giants have a ton of holes. I understand that. But quarterback is right up there. If it's not at the top of the list, it's got to be pretty darn close. The notion that Jones was dealt a bad hand and he deserves one more shot is just wrong, okay? There were people saying that exact same thing about Sam Darnold. Look at what happened with him in Carolina. Now look, if you take a good quarterback out of a bad situation, sometimes he puts it together. Ryan Tannehill, when he got out of Miami, put it all together. But Tannehill with the Dolphins looked exponentially better than Daniel Jones does now. Did Tannehill look like a world beater with the Dolphins? The answer is no. But did it look like he was out of place in the NFL? The answer is no. Alright, it still takes skill to win in this league. You've got to be talented. Daniel Jones doesn't have any skill. Daniel Jones isn't talented. Daniel Jones is a bust. For as long as he is the Giants starting quarterback, I don't care who the head coach is. I don't care who the GM is. I don't care who's around him. The Giants aren't going to win anything. You want to tell me that Josh Allen and Daniel Jones have a similar skill set? Yes, they do. I understand that. But so does Tyler Huntley. Do you want Tyler Huntley as your starter? Let me tell you, if you want to bring in a mobile quarterback, bring in Tyrod Taylor. Bring in someone with a connection to Shane. Bring in a quarterback who, if he can stay healthy, can make stuff happen with his legs and has a good arm. If your point is you want a mobile quarterback, you want someone with a similar skill set to Josh Allen, go with Tyrod Taylor. Don't go with Daniel Jones. Come on. What has Daniel Jones shown you in his 3 years in the NFL to make you think he could be successful? It's Sam Darnold all over again. Alright, all the Giants have to do is look across the building and you'll see the answer to what should be done with Daniel Jones. The Jets moved on from Sam Darnold. They brought in Zach Wilson. They are in a much better spot now than the Panthers. The Giants need to move on from Jones, sell him to the highest bidder, or just cut him and bring in a new quarterback. Also, the notion that this quarterback class is top tier is wrong. There is only one quarterback who I absolutely love, and that is Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh. I like Matt Corral. I really like Sam Howell. I like Malik Willis. Desmond Ritter's solid. Carson Strong is solid. But as far as a franchise quarterback goes, I think Kenny Pickett is the guy. I think Sam Howell can get there. I think Matt Corral can get there. And I think Malik Willis can get there, but the gap to me between Pickett and everyone else is exponential. Even then, though, in a perfect world, I'm not taking Pickett in the top 10. What's the saying you hear all the time? This quarterback can make all the throws. Kenny Pickett doesn't have a great arm. He has a very good arm, not a great arm. That does concern me a lot. Also, I don't like the fact that he's a one-hit wonder. I understand the one-hit wonders have succeeded in the NFL. Cough, cough, Joe Burrow. But Pickett doesn't have that Burrow vibe around him. Joe Burrow was a consensus top 2 prospect in his draft. Kenny Pickett isn't even a consensus top 5 pick. And like Eric said, the Giants have a ton of holes. They're not going to have a lot of room to add free agents. So if I am operating under the mindset that improving the pass rush and the O-line are the best moves for the Giants going forward, I'm looking at DeMarvin Leal at 5 out of Texas A&M, and a guy like Charles Cross or Tyler Linderbaum or Ike Ekwonu at 7. You want to tell me that the Giants can take one of those guys at 5 and then Pickett at 7? I'd be okay with that. I'd have no problem with that at all. But I don't know if I have a top 10 grade on Pickett. I haven't finalized my board yet. And I'm just not sure if I'd be comfortable taking Pickett in the top 10. I understand the quarterback needy teams reach. I totally get that, but is that really the best use of resources for the Giants? I'm not sure. Wouldn't be mad at it. Wouldn't be mad at Pickett going 7. Look, there are a lot of quarterback needy teams in the top 10. You've got the Giants, the Panthers, the Giants again, the Falcons may want to take Matt Ryan's successor, and you've got the Broncos. One of those teams is gonna take Kenny Pickett. Alright, I don't see him getting out of the top 10. In a perfect world, would he? Maybe. But I don't see it happening. Quarterback needy teams reach. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, Jacob, if you don't want the Giants to take Pickett, what do you want them to do going forward? You just said you don't want them to stick with Jones. What are you doing? Easy. I'm bringing in a bridge quarterback for this year. Maybe a guy like Teddy Bridgewater. If you can get Deshaun Watson, great. If you can get Russell Wilson, great. But I think it's easier to speculate on the Giants bringing in a bridge quarterback. Because if they're bringing in a guy like Watson or Wilson, that means they're trading one or both of their first, and that opens up a big can of worms. So it's easier to just say that the Giants are going to bring in a bridge quarterback. A guy like Teddy Bridgewater or Jacoby Brissett or Tyrod Taylor. Even Andy Dalton would make sense. Then, in 2023, a better quarterback class, you can take a guy like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson or DJ Uiagalelei, and you're set. Also, I'll say this, in day 2, I wouldn't be opposed to the Giants taking a quarterback. I mean, Lord only knows who's going to be available in day 2, but I wouldn't be opposed to the Giants taking a quarterback in day 2. And saying this veteran quarterback that we brought in is going to start, but we really like this quarterback that we just drafted. If something happens with the veteran, we have the rookie waiting in the wings. We're really high on his upside. We're high on his talent level. And we're not closing the door to him starting at some point this year. But as of right now, it's going to be the bridge quarterback. Alright, if you're Shane, you can't miss on a quarterback. Dave Gettleman missed on Daniel Jones. That's why he's out of a job right now. If I could counsel Joe Shane, I would say don't hitch your wagon to a losing horse. Move on from Jones. Write him off as the lost cause that he is. If you fall in love with Kenny Pickett, I'm okay with you taking him at 5 or 7. No one else. But even then, I'm not sure if that's what I would do. I think I'd rather the Giants bring in a bridge quarterback, draft a rookie in day 2, and wait for the 2023 class, which is going to be stacked. It'll be exponentially better than this class. I mean, realistically, the 3rd or 4th best quarterback in that draft could be better than Kenny Pickett. Depends on how DJ Uiagalelei does. I'm not a big fan of his, but I'm also not going to write off the possibility that he can have a bounce-back season. I wouldn't put anything past Dabo Swinney. Alright, now it's time to preview this weekend's 4 playoff games. I'll go chronologically. That means I'll start with Bengals Titans. If the Bengals are going to win this game, I'd like them to make a concerted effort to get the running game more involved. You think about what happened last week. Joe Mixon had 17 carries for only 48 yards. I mean, he was dreadful. Joe Burrow was outstanding. That's why the Bengals won. And Jamar Chase was too. But how sustainable is that? Do you really want to say to your second-year quarterback, you have to win us this game by yourself again? Or do you want to say to him, hey, we're going to give you some help. We're going to make a concerted effort to get Joe Mixon involved. We're not going to put as much on your plate. I'd rather go with the latter. Against a defense as great as the Titans, a one-dimensional approach isn't going to work. You've got to change things up. If they can sit pass all game, guys like Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker and Janoris Jenkins and Christian Fulton are going to have a field day. Look, you know that Jamar Chase is going to get his because he's Jamar Chase. He's one of the best young players in the NFL. He's probably going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. But I'd really like to see the Bengals make a concerted effort to get their Pro Bowl running back more involved. A guy who had over 1,200 rushing yards this year and 13 touchdowns. But it's the opposite for the Titans. Now, Derrick Henry is back. And I know what you're thinking. Great, fantastic. The Titans are going to feed him the rock, and he's going to run roughshod over the Bengals defense. I wouldn't be so sure about that. It's great that Derrick Henry is back. Alright, if Derrick Henry was still on the sidelines, the Titans would have no chance in this game. Henry being back gives the Titans a great chance to win this game. But you know he's not going to be at 100%. I mean, with Henry's running style, he invites contact. All it takes is one wrong fall or twist or something to that foot, and Henry is out of the game and maybe out for part of next season or worse. I'm not saying you don't use Derrick Henry. Of course you use Derrick Henry. Alright, but Derrick Henry this year averaged 27.5 carries per game. I don't want Derrick Henry getting 27.5 carries in this game. In a perfect world, he'd get maybe 20. I just know that he's not going to be as effective as we've grown accustomed to seeing. Will he still be really good? Yes, he's Derrick Henry. He's the best running back in the NFL. But he won't be great. Also, I'll say this, the Bengals have a really good rushing defense. I know they didn't show it last week against the Raiders, but their rushing defense is actually pretty darn good. They allowed the 5th fewest rushing yards in the NFL. So it's going to be on Ryan Tannehill to win this game. Can you trust Ryan Tannehill to win a playoff game by himself? Probably not. See, you're towing a fine line here. You're going to want to feed Derrick Henry a ton because he's Derrick Henry. But you know he's not going to be as effective as you've grown used to seeing. He'll still be really good, but he won't be great. And that's going to put the onus on Ryan Tannehill to really step up and be the seminal reason that the Titans win. Ryan Tannehill has won 2 playoff games in his career. In neither one of those games did he throw for 90 yards. Actually, it's kind of funny. His best playoff game was the 2019 AFC title game where the Titans went up 17-7 on the Chiefs, but then the Chiefs came storming back. Tannehill completed 21 of 31 passes for 209 yards and 2 touchdowns. Derrick Henry in that game had 19 carries for 69 yards and a touchdown. It's going to be very tough for the Titans to win this game. I trust Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon more than I trust Ryan Tannehill and an injured Derrick Henry. Last week, I only picked one road team to win. In the end, I was right that only one road team would win, but I was wrong on the road team. I picked the Cardinals. Obviously, they got destroyed. The Niners were the team that went into Dallas and won. I'm going to start my picks today off by picking a road team. Give me the Bengals in the upset. Moving on now to Niners-Packers. If the Niners are going to win this game, Jimmy Garoppolo needs to play mistake-free football. It was 2 years ago that the Packers and Niners went at it in the playoffs. The Packers went into Levi's Stadium with the NFC title on the line and got utterly destroyed 37-20. Why did the Niners win that game? Mainly because Aaron Rodgers played like absolute garbage. The Niners were up 27-0 at the half, but also Kyle Shanahan called a very conservative game. Jimmy Garoppolo only attempted 8 passes. Raheem Mostert had 29 carries for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. I'm not saying that Elijah Mitchell needs to have a game like that. I'm not saying that Deebo Samuel needs to have a game like that. But Jimmy Garoppolo can't make any mistakes. You don't want to give Aaron Rodgers more chances than the bare minimum to beat you. I mean, think about it this way. When did the Cowboys really get back into the game last week? When Garoppolo threw the interception to Anthony Brown. On the ensuing drive, the Cowboys scored a touchdown. That made it 23-17. Without that pick, we're not talking about the officials. We're not talking about Randy Gregory. We're not talking about Kellen Moore. We're not talking about any of that. So look, if you're Garoppolo, play smart, be conservative, make the safe throws, don't try to be a hero. Let Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel be the heroes. As for the Packers, this is going to sound incredibly obvious. And look, this is going to sound like the cop-out answer. I know, I totally get it. I can hear all the eyes rolling now, but I can't make something up. Aaron Rodgers needs to play like Aaron Rodgers. It's not a guarantee that Rodgers plays great. What's been the biggest knock on Rodgers recently? His lack of playoff success. Think about it. 2 years ago, in the NFC title game, he lays an egg. And last year, in the NFC title game, he lays an egg. No one remembers it because of Matt LaFleur's asinine decision to kick a field goal rather than trust his Hall of Fame quarterback to make a play. But for more than a half, Rodgers was dreadful. I mean, the Buccaneers were up 28-10 at one point. Rodgers had really only made one great throw. That was the touchdown pass to Marquise Valdes-Scantling. Then the Packers come storming back. Rodgers seems to be putting it all together, and then that's when Matt LaFleur pulls the plug. Look, both things can be true. Aaron Rodgers can have a bad game, but should still be given the opportunity to win. He's earned that right. Look, Rodgers' failures in the playoffs are something that's going to be discussed all throughout this game and for the next few weeks. But it's hard to bet against the Packers. It's hard to bet against Rodgers. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Niners this year. I was never in love with them. They're better than I gave them credit for. At the end of the day, it does take skill to win a playoff game. But I don't look at them as a world beater. I think the Packers are going to get a little bit of revenge. I think they will beat the Niners pretty easily. I'll say this, regardless of the results, I think we can all agree on this as football fans. We just want competitive games. Like, I understand if your team is in it You want your team to win 50-0, but if you're impartial, you want a back and forth affair. You want to be on the edge of your seat. We only had 2 really good games. Raiders, Bengals, and Niners, Cowboys. That was it. There were no second half lead changes. None. I want exciting football. Moving on now to Sunday's games. Rams, Buccaneers. Little bit of a Super Bowl rematch. Tom Brady versus Sean McVay. If the Rams are going to win this game, they've got to get Cooper Kupp more involved. You knew that the Cardinals would take away Kupp. Alright, they did a really good job of that on Monday. That was about the only thing they did right. The thing is, though, if you're going to beat this Buccaneers team, a Buccaneers team that has run roughshod over just about all comers this year, you're going to need a complete effort. Think about it this way. In week 3, the Rams faced the Buccaneers at SoFi Stadium. The Rams won 34-24. They thoroughly outplayed the Buccaneers in that game. How did they win it? They had a complete effort. Matthew Stafford was great. Sonny Michel was really good. Cooper Kupp was really good. Tyler Higbee was really good. It takes a complete effort to beat this Buccaneers team. I mean, you just saw the Buccaneers wipe the floor with the Eagles. I mean, look, the Eagles weren't world beaters this year, but come on. I don't think anyone expected them to be down 31-0 at one point. The Rams played pretty close to a complete game against the Cardinals. Their defense was outstanding. You'd like to get Van Jefferson a little more involved, but he's not as important as Kupp, Beckham, and Higbee. I was fine with how the Rams used Beckham. It was nice to see him exercise some of his playoff demons. Higbee was solid. You'd like to see him used a little bit more, but that's not the end of the world. Cooper Kupp, though, can't only have 5 catches for 61 yards on Sunday. That's not going to work if the Rams are going to win this game. He's got to step up. He's got to be better. I mean, I'll say this. Cooper Kupp versus Jamel Dean. How does that sound? Another good old movie, Gunga Din. You're a better man than I am. And yes, it is pronounced Gunga Din, not Din. I know it's spelled Din, it is Dean. So every time I hear Jamel Dean or N'Kobe Dean, I think back to the Cary Grant and Douglas Fairbanks movie. I'm weird. Meanwhile, if the Buccaneers are going to win this game, they can't let Matthew Stafford kill them. Alright, Stafford killed them in week 3. Just to put a finer point on it, he completed 27 of his 38 passes for 343 yards and 4 touchdowns. And against the Cardinals on Monday, he was really good. Completed 13 of 17 passes for 202 yards. He had 2 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. You can't let him beat you. Let it be Cam Akers. Let it be Sonny Michel. Let those guys go off. That's okay. Akers wasn't that great on Monday. He averaged just 3.2 yards per carry. Michel averaged 4.5. I like that, but he wasn't outstanding. I didn't mistake him for Marshall Faulk when I was watching him. That's another reason why I'm picking the Bengals, because Cam Akers did not look good. What makes you think Derrick Henry's going to look good? I understand that Henry is better than Akers, but Akers is a talented running back. I just saw a talented running back get hampered by an injury that he was able to push through. So there's a very easy connection there between Akers and Henry. I want to see the Buccaneers call a lot of run blitzes. I want to see them send pressure. I want to see them live in the Rams' backfield. Look, this is going to be a great game. I think this is going to be a one-score game. I think it's going to be a back-and-forth affair. And I'm going to pick the Buccaneers. They're home. The home team won 5 of 6 games last week. But B, I picked the Buccaneers to make the Super Bowl before the season started. So I want my pick to stay alive. Moving on now to Bills-Chiefs. A rematch of last year's AFC title game taking place a round early. Pretty interesting how things like that work out. These two teams met earlier this year. They met in Week 5 at Arrowhead. So this is a tried and true rematch. But the Bills won that game. They beat the Chiefs 38-20. They sent the Chiefs to 2-3, and that's when the questions really started to pop up. Is this Chiefs team as good as we thought they were? Those questions were then echoed after the Chiefs got destroyed by the Titans, but the Chiefs rallied to win 9 of their last 10 games. But how did the Bills beat the Chiefs? That's the key. I thought they did a great job of confusing Mahomes in that game. Their offensive line was really good. Mahomes only got sacked twice. That's okay. You can live with that. But one thing that I thought Leslie Frazier did great was disguise pressure, disguise coverage, show one look at the line, and then when the play unfolded, the Bills turned out to be playing a completely different defense. Let's put it this way. There's a reason why Leslie Frazier is being mentioned as a head coaching candidate. I don't want to say it's solely because of that game, but it certainly helped. If you can stop Patrick Mahomes like that, people are going to take notice. Also, the Bills had the best defense in the NFL this year in terms of points against per game. I'm not saying Leslie Frazier will get a job, but he certainly earned the right to be interviewed. So the key for the Bills is going to be keeping Mahomes uncomfortable. Showing him one thing, then doing something else, showing pressure, then backing out of it, blitzing someone who Mahomes doesn't think is going to blitz. Make his life difficult. Now, how do you counter that? The biggest thing would be calling safe plays that you know are going to work, whether they're simple screens or easy short passes to a guy like Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce. That's how you counter it. Now, that does take away a lot of what makes Mahomes special. His arm, his no-look passes, his improvisational skills. I understand that, but when Mahomes did that earlier in the season against the Bills, he got torched. Mahomes threw 2 interceptions. He lost a fumble. He looked really, really bad in that game. It was easily one of his worst games of the season. I'll be curious when Eric Bieniemy decides to dial up a play where Mahomes can work his magic. Where it's, you know what, we're going to have our receivers go deep. Patrick, work your magic, manipulate the defense, go crazy, have fun, show why you're the best player in the NFL. The thing is, though, it's very tough to win if you're, in essence, neutering Patrick Mahomes. If I'm saying play it safe, don't do what makes you spectacular, that takes away a lot of what Mahomes does. That makes him ordinary. I'm not saying that makes him bad, it just makes him ordinary. I mean, there's a reason why I picked the Bills to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl before the season started. And I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to go with the Bills in the upset. I'll close this show out with some NBA Valk talk, specifically about a report from Shams Charania of The Athletic involving my beloved Nets. According to him, the Nets have reached an agreement with Paul Millsap to find him a new home. And you could see this coming. Since December 12th, Millsap had only played in 3 games. And in only one of those games did he eclipse 10 minutes of playing time. He had fallen out of the rotation. He was listed as inactive some nights. Look, there's a reason why I was skeptical of the fit of Paul Millsap in Brooklyn. I let people talk me into thinking that it could work, but I really should have stuck to my guns. I knew Millsap was past his prime. You could see he was past his prime. He was a good rebounder. He's actually one of the better rebounders the Nets have. If you look at per 36 minute stats, Paul Millsap is actually second on the Nets in rebounds per game. He's only behind Day'Ron Sharpe. That doesn't mean he's the second best rebounder on the team, but he's a solid rebounder. And that is something that the Nets have had difficulty with. You've seen them get abused on the glass by bigger teams. There have been moments where I've thought, put in Millsap for a little bit, see what he can do. Maybe he can turn the tide on the glass a little bit. But he's just so limited everywhere else that I understand Steve Nash not doing that. He was dreadful offensively, was not good defensively, shell of his former self. I had a feeling this wouldn't work. Like I said, I don't know why I let people talk me into thinking that he would work out. I really should stick to my guns. Now, Millsap has earned the right to find a new team that will give him more playing time. Alright, he's a 4-time All-Star. Has been in the NBA for 16 seasons. If he wants an opportunity to play more, give him that opportunity. The thing is, though, what playoff team is going to give him that chance? I'll do you one better. What finals contender is going to give him that chance? Paul Millsap has never won an NBA Finals. In fact, he's never even played in an NBA Finals. So it's kind of interesting to hear him say that he wants more playing time, ostensibly on a team that's not as well set up for a finals run. Look, if he goes to a team like the Suns or the Warriors or the Bulls or the Heat or a team like that, fine. Okay, those teams can go on a big run, but are any of those teams going to be interested? Paul Millsap is past his prime. I mean, I could see him going to a younger team, playing more and taking on more of a mentorship role, if that's something that Millsap would be open to, but good luck finding a team that's gonna make the playoffs and is willing to give you meaningful minutes. I don't know what team in the hunt would be willing to do that. I mean, I don't see the Nets getting anything of value for Millsap. I do think they're going to end up buying him out, which is okay. That's not the end of the world. I just don't see another finals contender saying, yeah, we'll sign you. If a finals contender does sign him, I don't see him getting meaningful minutes for that team. I mean, look, if there's an injury, of course that can change. But I think the odds are Paul Millsap isn't going to have a big impact on this year's NBA Finals. If he just wants to play more, and he doesn't care if that team is good or not, okay, fair enough. That's his prerogative. But what would you rather have if you're Millsap? More playing time or your first ring? For me, that answer would be my first ring. I've done everything else in this league. I want some jewelry. And I'm very surprised that Millsap disagrees with that sentiment. Brooklyn Nets show comes your way Monday night. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk show come your way every weekday afternoon. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying, shout out to you, Louis Anderson.